Good morning and welcome to the What's Up News Network being broadcast from Panama City Beach, Florida, the home of the world's most beautiful beaches. I am Jim Free with Jim Free Realty. Please help me out and hit the red subscribe button just below the picture. Last Friday afternoon, Addie, age 6, and Baylor, age 4, were playing putt-putt with their parents, Matt and Lauren Kirchgenser, when a pickup truck ran off the front beach road, entering the Coconut Grove Fun Park, and struck and killed both these beautiful children. The family was vacationing from Louisville, Kentucky. Baylor was a preschooler and Addie was a first grader. Please keep this family in your prayers. This year being non-stop uncertainty. The coronavirus pandemic led to shutdowns and major changes in our everyday lives. These changes are likely to continue as we head into the winter. Cities have been hard hit, not only in terms of public health, but also economically. Despite everything, the housing market is one of those things that has been consistently strong this year. So what do the experts think about next year will bring? We get lots of calls about this, and of course we're not the experts, but we can try to keep you up to date of what the experts are saying. Will the positivity hold steady, or will we be in for a big bust? Rising prices. If inventory remains low in the early 2021s, it's possible that home prices will continue to go up. The median asking price for properties in September 2020, according to Realtor.com, was $350,000. That's up 11% compared to last year's inventory. Has declined 39% year over year, despite a quick burst of new listings in August. Increased demand and dwindling supply are great for sellers, but not so much for the buyers. Suburbs reign supreme. There has been a big shift in interest away from urban areas as many people are packing up to find homes with more space and less proximity to others. We could see continued flight from urban areas to suburban areas in 2021. Builders seem to be confident. Despite all the headwinds and what feels like a barrage of negative information, there is some optimism in housing starts. Consumer confidence was high in September, and builders' sentiment similarly seemed to be at an all-time high. Could there be a downside? While there are some indicators of things being positive, there are also potential negatives that could come into play. Unemployment numbers are still high, and rolling lockdowns throughout the winter could cause those numbers to rise. Some predict that foreclosures could also rise as a result. When facing uncertainty and anxiety, there's a tendency among consumers and would-be homebuyers to hoard their cash. Personal savings rates have actually gone up recently, but that means there may be less spending going on, particularly on bigger items like housing. Finally, while there are some unnerving indicators, we do know with most certainty that record low mortgage rates will hold. The Fed has signaled their intention to keep rates low for the foreseeable future. So it looks like good markets, both for sellers and buyers. Because of the inventory shortage, it'll be good for the sellers to get a higher price, and because of the Fed keeping the interest rate low, those buyers who are using loans will be able to get good loans with low interest rates. Ted had recently moved to Booga Holler, and it didn't take him long to spot the prettiest girl in his high school. Her name was Jenny Lynn, and she was a junior. Ted finally got up the nerve to ask her for a date, and to his surprise, she accepted. Jenny Lind was also excited. She was dating a senior. She wanted to introduce him to her parents, so she arranged for her mother to fix dinner for them. She told Ted to be at her house at 7 p.m., and she would have a big surprise for him. Like most boys with raging hormones, Ted thought that meant only one thing. Ted was ecstatic, but being inexperienced in such matters, he felt he should talk with someone. He didn't feel like he could talk with his dad, and sure didn't want to talk to his preacher. As Ted passed by the local drugstore, he decided to talk to the pharmacist. The pharmacist advised Ted that he was too young to engage in such activity and should not do so outside of marriage. Seeing how insistent Ted was, he invited Ted into his office and tells Ted he thinks he's making a big mistake, but if he's determined to go through with it, he should buy some protection for him and his girlfriend. That night, Ted shows up at Jenny Lind's house and meets her at the door. "Oh, I'm so excited for you to meet my parents. Come on in." Ted goes inside and is taken to the dinner table where Jenny Lind's parents are seated. Ted quickly offers to say grace and bows his head. A minute passes and Ted is still deep in prayer with his head down. 10 minutes passes and still no movement from Ted. Finally, 20 minutes later, Ted says amen. After dinner, Jenny Lind whispers, "I had no idea you were so religious." Ted turns to her and whispers back, "I had no idea your father was a pharmacist." Well, let's get back to the situation in Georgia. There are two candidates running for U.S. Senator that appear to be backing socialism and communist ideas. Socialism, communism, and Christianity are just not compatible, and the socialists and communists in this country are doing everything they can to destroy the church. What they don't understand is that the church is not a building. It is the believers. Socialism and communism are religions, but their idols are the gods with the little g. Christians' God is the God with the big G. To understand this a little better, let's go back to the 3rd chapter of Daniel. This is a story that a lot of us learned when we were children. King Nebuchadnezzar made a gold statue 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide, and set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then he sent messages to all the high officials, the governors, the advisors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrate, the sheriff, and all the provincial officials to come to the dedication of the statue he had set up. So all these officials came and stood before the statue King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then a herald shouted out, "People of all races and nations and languages, listen to the king's command. When you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, the pipes, and other musical instruments, bow to the ground to worship King Nebuchadnezzar's gold statue. Anyone who refuses to obey will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace." So at the sound of the musical instruments, the people, whatever their race, nationality, or language, bowed to the ground and worshiped the gold statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then they said to the king, "Nebuchadnezzar, long live the king. You issued a decree requiring all the people to bow down and worship the gold statue when they heard the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, the pipes, and other musical instruments. That decreed all states that those who refuse to obey must be thrown into a blazing furnace. But there are some Jews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, whom you have put in charge of the province of Babylon. They pay no attention to you. Your Majesty, they refuse to serve your gods and do not worship the gold statue you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar flew into a rage and ordered that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought before him. When they had brought him in, Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you refuse to serve my God or to worship the gold statue I have set up? I will give you one more chance to bow down and worship the statue I have made when you hear the sound of the musical instruments. But if you refuse, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace, and then what God will be able to rescue from my power?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, "Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your Majesty. But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your Majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue you have set up." Nebuchadnezzar was so furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that his face became distorted with rage. He commanded that the furnace be heated 7 times hotter than normal. Then he ordered some of the strongest men in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So they tied them up and threw them in the furnace, fully dressed in their pants, turbans, robes, and other garments. And because the king in his anger had demanded such a hot fire in the furnace, the flames killed the soldiers as they threw the men into the furnace. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, securely tied, fell into the roaring flames. But suddenly Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in amazement and exclaimed to his advisors, "Did we tie up 3 men and throw them into the furnace?" "Yes, your Majesty, we certainly did," they replied. "Look," Nebuchadnezzar shouted, "I see 4 men, unbound, walking around in the fire, unharmed, and the 4th looks like a god." Then Nebuchadnezzar came as close as he could to the door of the furnace and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stepped out of the fire. Then the high officers, officials, governors, advisors, sheriff crowded around them and saw that they had not been touched. Not a hair on their heads was singed, and their clothing was not scorched. They didn't even smell like smoke. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent his angel to rescue his servants who trusted in him. They defied the king's command and were willing to die rather than serve or worship in any god except their own. Therefore I make this decree: if any people, whatever their race, national, language, speak a word against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they will be torn limb from limb, and their houses will be turned into heaps of rubble. There is no God who can rescue like this." Correct and sound doctrine is crucial for salvation, growth, and spiritual maturity. It comes as no surprise that God warns us many times in Scripture to beware of false teachers. Christians need to be able to recognize false teachers in order to know when they are being led down a path that God did not intend. We're now faced in this country with people who support communism and socialism and want that form of government in our country. That is not compatible with Christianity. So they will try everything they can to destroy that and destroy our way of life. They want everybody to be dependent upon government, and soon it'll be a centralized government, and everyone will be slaves except those who are running the government. What does the Bible say about false prophet? God speaks harshly against false prophets, occults, practices, and other means of sorcery. God describes a false prophet as one who presumes to speak in my name anything I have not commanded, or a prophet who speaks in the name of other gods. God says that evildoers prophesy lies, offering false visions, idolaters, and delusions of their own minds. I encourage you to listen closely to what Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff are saying. These are candidates that are running against Senators Perdue and Kelly Loeffler in the state of Georgia. I trust that Christians will turn out, check out, pray, and vote for Senator Kelly Loeffler and Senator David Perdue. This country does not need socialists or communists in their Senate. Fear not, and do not despair, for I have read the book from cover to cover several times now, and I assure you that as Christians we win. So do not despair. Until we meet again, may God bless you, your home, your family, and this great nation that we live in.